Dr. Marcus Hale, a young physician fresh from the bustling hospitals of Boston, had finally uprooted his family for a quieter life. He accepted the position as director of the student health services at a modest college in upstate New York. The destination was a sprawling, two-story colonial house on the outskirts of the sleepy town of Evergreen Hollow, Vermont. The property sat right along Route 15, a winding two-lane road that carried heavy logging trucks and chemical haulers day and night. The real estate agent had called it charming rural living with easy access. Marcus liked the sound of that. Space for his children to run, fresh air, and a slower pace after the chaos of city medicine. His wife, Elena, was less enthusiastic. She came from a wealthy Chicago family. Her parents, the Whitmores, had opposed the move from the start, calling it reckless with two small children. But Marcus had insisted. 35, he wanted roots. Their daughter Lila, a bright-eyed 5-year-old with a mop of dark curls, was thrilled about the big adventure. Their toddler son Ben, barely 2, mostly cared about his snacks and his favorite stuffed bear. And then there was Midnight, Lila's sleek black cat, who regarded the entire relocation with feline disdain. They arrived on a humid late summer afternoon in 1983. The moving truck rumbled away as the family stood on the wide front lawn. The house was beautiful, white clapboard with green shutters, a wraparound porch, and woods stretching endlessly behind it. But the road was uncomfortably close. Trucks roared past every few minutes, their engines like distant thunder. "Look, Daddy, a path into the trees." Lila pointed excitedly as they unpacked. Before Marcus could respond, an elderly man ambled across the lawn from the neighboring house. He was tall and lean, with a weathered face, sharp blue eyes, and a shock of white hair. "Name's Elias Thorne," he said, extending a calloused hand. "Folks round here just call me Eli. Saw you pull in. Welcome to Evergreen Hollow." Marcus shook his hand firmly. Elena hovered nearby, holding Ben on her hip. Eli's gaze softened as he looked at the children. Pretty little ones. That the missus? And the cat? Fine specimen. They chatted for a while. Eli, a widower in his early 80s, had lived in the area his whole life. He offered homemade lemonade and stories about the old logging days. That evening, as the sun dipped low, Eli insisted on showing them the woods. "There's something you ought to see," he said. "Won't take long." They followed a well-worn path behind the Hale property, through a field of tall grass, then into the shadowy forest. The air grew cooler, heavier with pine and earth. After 10 minutes, they reached a clearing. Crude wooden crosses and stones dotted the ground in neat rows. Hand-painted signs read names like Rusty, best dog ever, Fluffy 1978 to 1982, and Buster the Bunny. A weathered board arch proclaimed in childish letters, Pet Cemetery. Lila's eyes widened. "It's a cemetery for animals." Eli nodded solemnly. "Kids from town been burying their pets here for generations. Road takes them more often than not. Those trucks, they don't slow down much." He glanced toward the highway, his voice dropping. "You keep a close eye on the little ones and that cat. Document Road's a killer." Elena shivered, clutching Ben tighter. She had her own ghosts. Her younger sister, Sophia, had died horribly from a spinal disease when Elena was a child. The memory of her sister's twisted body and screams in the night still haunted her. Death was not something she liked to dwell on. That first week passed in a blur of unpacking and new routines. Marcus started at the college infirmary. The work was lighter than Boston's ER, mostly sprains, flu shots, and the occasional party-fueled mishap. One afternoon, a jogger named Victor Lang was brought in after being struck by a car on campus. Marcus worked frantically, but the young man's head injury was catastrophic. As Victor slipped away on the table, he whispered strange words. "The door! Don't go beyond the deadfall. The ground is sour." Marcus dismissed it as delirium. That night, he dreamed of Victor leading him through the woods to the pet cemetery, pointing deeper into the trees with a bloody finger. "Stay away," the dead man urged. Marcus woke in a sweat, his bare feet caked in dirt and pine needles. He must have sleepwalked. Elena worried, but he laughed it off. Halloween approached. Eli's wife, Martha, suffered a heart episode one evening. Marcus rushed over with his medical bag and stabilized her. The old couple was grateful. Friendship deepened between Marcus and Eli. The older man became a surrogate grandfather figure, filling a void since Marcus had lost his own father young. Thanksgiving came. Elena took the children back to her parents in Chicago for the holiday. Marcus stayed behind to cover shifts. Alone in the big house, he enjoyed the quiet, until midnight didn't come home one night. The cat was found the next morning, crushed on Route 15. Lila's screams echoed through the house when she learned. Marcus wrapped the stiff body in a towel, grief twisting in his gut. Eli appeared as if sensing trouble. "Come with me, son," the old man said quietly. "There's a place where things can be set right sometimes." They carried Midnight's body along the path to the pet cemetery as dusk fell. But Eli didn't stop there. He led Marcus further, past a treacherous pile of fallen logs and branches, the deadfall. The air grew colder, unnatural. Fog clung to the ground. They reached a rocky clearing deeper in the woods, where the soil felt strangely spongy and cold. Ancient stones marked graves in a spiral pattern. Eli explained in a low voice, this was an old burial ground of the local native tribes, the Abenaki and before them others. The Micmacs and such called it sour ground. Wendigo spirit, they said, hunger that walks turns things bad. But it brings them back. Not the same, mind you. Never the same. Marcus was skeptical but desperate to ease Lila's pain. They dug a shallow grave, placed Midnight inside, and covered it. Eli warned, "Don't speak of this, and don't expect miracles." The next day, Midnight returned. He scratched at the back door, looking ragged, matted fur, a flat eye, a strange leer. He smelled of dirt and something metallic. The cat ate voraciously but hunted with vicious glee, leaving eviscerated mice and birds on the porch. Elena, returning from Chicago, recoiled. "That thing is not our cat," she whispered. Lila tried to cuddle him but pulled away, sensing the wrongness. Ben cried when Midnight hissed. Winter settled over Evergreen Hollow. Snow blanketed the woods. Marcus buried himself in work, but the cat's return gnawed at him. Eli shared more stories by the fire, how his own dog had been brought back years ago, how it changed, how the ground fed on grief like a parasite. Some things are meant to stay dead, document. Norma, Eli's wife, passed peacefully a few months later. Marcus attended the funeral, feeling the weight of mortality. Then came the spring of 1984. Ben had just turned 2.5, full of toddling energy. One bright afternoon, as the family played in the yard, a massive logging truck barreled down Route 15. Ben darted after a ball. The brakes screamed too late. The impact was horrific. Marcus held his son's broken body, blood soaking his shirt, Elena's wails piercing the air. Paramedics arrived, but it was over. Lila stood frozen. Midnight watched from the porch with gleaming, unnatural eyes. Grief consumed the Hales. Elena's parents demanded they return to Chicago. Marcus refused, numb and raging inside. Eli visited daily, his face etched with sorrow. "I know what you're thinking, son. Don't. The place beyond. It don't give back what you lose. It gives back something else. hungry, wrong. But in the dead of night, as Elena sobbed herself to sleep with sedatives, Marcus remembered midnight's return, the promise of a second chance. The sour ground waited in the woods. The funeral for little Ben Hale was held on a raw, windswept afternoon in late April 1984 at the old Evergreen Hollow Congregational Church. Rain mixed with sleet pelted the black umbrellas as Marcus stood like a statue beside the tiny white casket. Elena had collapsed twice during the service, her face a mask of raw agony. Her parents, the Whitmores, had flown in immediately and now hovered like vultures, urging, demanding, that the family return to Chicago at once. "This place killed him," Elena's father hissed at Marcus outside the church. "Your stubbornness. Your damn fresh start." Marcus said nothing. Inside, a storm raged far darker than the Vermont weather. He had barely slept since the accident. The image of Ben's broken body haunted every blink. Tiny sneakers askew, blood on the asphalt, the truck driver's horrified face. Lila, now 6, hadn't spoken more than 3 words in 2 days. She clutched a faded photo of her brother and stared at the woods behind their house with hollow eyes. That night, after the Whitmores had taken Elena and Lila to a hotel in Montpelier for a change of scenery, Marcus sat alone in the darkened living room. Midnight, the thing that had once been midnight, perched on the windowsill, watching him with those flat, luminous eyes. The cat's returned presence had grown more unsettling. It killed for sport, leaving half-eaten carcasses arranged in strange patterns on the porch. Sometimes it stared toward the forest path as if listening to a silent call. Eli Thorne arrived unannounced around midnight, letting himself in with the spare key Marcus had given him weeks earlier. The old man looked 20 years older, his shoulders slumped under a heavy flannel coat. "I know that look, son," Eli said quietly, pouring them both generous measures of bourbon. "You're thinking about taking him up there, to the sour ground." Marcus didn't deny it. Midnight came back. "He's different, but he's here. Ben could be here too, playing in the yard again, laughing." Eli's hand trembled as he set down his glass. "It ain't him that comes back, Marcus. The Micmacs knew it. The Wendigo spirit, the hunger that walks these woods, uses the place. It gives you a shell, empty, twisted. My own dog, years ago, after it returned, it tore apart 3 sheep and then turned on my Martha. Had to put it down with my shotgun while it laughed like a man." Laughed. Eli's voice cracked. "Some folks say the ground was cursed long before the Indians. Something older. It feeds on grief. Makes you keep feeding it." But Marcus's mind was made up. Grief had hollowed him into something capable of anything. Around 2 a.m., under a moonless sky, he carried Ben's exhumed body, wrapped in a clean sheet from the garage, along the familiar path, past the pet cemetery with its childish markers, over the treacherous deadfall where logs shifted like living bones under his boots, and into the ancient clearing. The air there was always colder, thicker, carrying a sweet rot stench beneath the pines. The spiral of stones seemed to pulse faintly in the dark. He dug with frantic energy, the soil yielding too easily, almost greedily. He placed his son's small, cold form into the shallow grave, whispering promises and apologies. "Come back to us, buddy. Daddy needs you." As he covered the earth, a low wind rose through the trees, carrying what sounded like distant, mocking laughter. Marcus stumbled home before dawn, collapsing into bed fully clothed, his hands raw and filthy. 3 days later, the scratching began at the back door. Elena and Lila had returned from the hotel against the Whitmore's protests. Elena moved like a ghost, heavily medicated. Lila had started sleepwalking, whispering her brother's name. When the scratching sounded, soft at first, then insistent, Elena froze at the kitchen table. Marcus's heart hammered as he opened the door. Ben stood there in the doorway, wearing the same overalls he died in, though they now looked freshly laundered and impossibly clean. His skin was pale, almost waxy, with a faint earthy smell clinging to him. A livid scar ran across his throat and chest where the truck had crushed him, but it had healed into a puckered line. His eyes, once bright blue, were now cloudy, yet they fixed on his family with unnatural intensity. "Benny," Elena whispered, dropping to her knees. Tears streamed down her face as she pulled him into her arms. The boy hugged her back, but his small hands gripped too tightly, fingers digging like claws. Lila approached warily. "Brother." Ben smiled, a slow, wrong smile that showed too many teeth for a toddler. "Lila," he said in a voice like dry leaves scraping together. "Play." The first week was a nightmare wrapped in desperate hope. Ben ate ravenously, preferring raw meat from the fridge that he tore with his fingers. He no longer slept through the night. Instead, he sat upright in the dark, staring at the walls and murmuring in a language that sounded like wind through graves. Midnight avoided him at first, then began following the boy like a shadow, both of them moving with the same jerky, predatory grace. Elena refused to see the truth. "It's a miracle," she insisted, rocking Ben for hours. "God gave him back." Marcus knew better. He caught the boy in the basement one night, dissecting a live mouse with clinical fascination, whispering, "All dead things come back. All dead things play." Eli confronted Marcus in the yard the following evening. "You fool. I told you. It's already starting. Lock your doors tonight. And for God's sake, watch the girl." That night, screams tore through the house. Marcus bolted upright to find Lila thrashing in her bed, blood trickling from deep scratches on her arms. Ben stood over her, his face smeared red, eyes gleaming with feral joy. "Sister wanted to play in the cemetery," he rasped. Elena pulled Lila away, hysterical. Marcus grabbed Ben, feeling the unnatural strength in the child's limbs, and locked him in the spare bedroom. The next morning, Elena was gone. She had taken Lila to her parents' hotel and called Marcus from the road, voice shaking with betrayal and terror. "That thing is not my son. We're never coming back to that house. Never to you." The line went dead. Marcus sat on the edge of Ben's bed, staring at the boy who now watched him with patient, ancient hunger. "You killed her sister once," the child thing said conversationally, its voice shifting between toddler and something far older. "No, that was the other one. But pain is sweet here. The ground is hungry still. Bring more." Hallucinations plagued Marcus. He saw Victor Lang, the dead jogger, standing in the hallway pointing toward the woods. He found himself sleepwalking again, waking at the deadfall with dirt under his nails. Eli stopped visiting. One evening, Marcus drove to the old man's house and found the front door ajar. Inside, Eli lay dead in his recliner, throat torn open in a familiar jagged pattern. Martha's old photo album was open on his lap to pictures of their long-dead dog. A single word was scratched into the wooden armrest. "Wendigo." Marcus buried Eli behind the pet cemetery the next night, knowing what he had to do. The final confrontation came on a stormy evening in early May. Power lines were down across Evergreen Hollow. The house creaked under gale-force winds. Marcus had spent the day sharpening the garden axe and preparing sedatives. He found Ben, now moving with terrifying speed, in the attic, surrounded by dead birds and squirrels arranged in the spiral pattern of the ancient burial ground. "You're not my son," Marcus said, voice breaking. The thing that wore Ben's face grinned. "I am what you made. The hunger walks in me now. Mother will come back too. And sister." We'll all play forever in the sour ground. It lunged with inhuman speed. Marcus fought desperately, the small body possessing the strength of something ancient and ravenous. They tumbled down the stairs in a blur of claws and screams. The axe finally fell once, twice, ending the nightmare in a spray of dark, unnatural blood that smelled of grave soil and pine. Marcus collapsed beside the still form, sobbing until his throat bled. But it wasn't over. Days blurred. Elena returned alone one final time, drawn by some terrible compulsion she couldn't explain. Perhaps the same force that had pulled Marcus to the burial ground. She found the house in shambles, the body of her resurrected son wrapped in plastic in the garage. Grief and madness overtook her. In the woods that night, she carried a shovel toward the ancient clearing, whispering that she could fix it all, bring everyone back properly this time. Marcus followed her trail of footprints. He found her digging frantically at the spiral stones, already unearthing something that should never have been disturbed again. Their struggle was brief and horrific. Elena, possessed by the same Wendigo hunger, attacked him with the shovel. In the end, Marcus had no choice. 2 fresh graves joined the others in the pet cemetery proper, shallow ones marked only with stones. Lila, safe with her grandparents in Chicago, would grow up believing her family had died in a tragic house fire. The official story spread through Evergreen Hollow, carbon monoxide poisoning from a faulty generator during the storm. No one questioned it much. The road still claimed its victims. The woods kept their secrets. Marcus Hale was never seen again. Some nights, locals swear they see a lone figure walking the path beyond the deadfall, carrying a small bundle, murmuring to the wind. The pet cemetery remains, its hand-painted signs fading year by year. Children still bury their pets there. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the logging trucks rumble past on Route 15, a small voice can be heard laughing from deep in the trees, patient, hungry, waiting for the next grieving soul to cross the deadfall.